So here with Dr. Aaron Kheriaty. First of all, welcome back to the show, and tell us what was the
Thanks, Siri.
How did that end up?
So that case is actually still in federal court. And just to catch people up, so I spent 15 years as a professor in the School of Medicine at the University of California, Irvine, where I also directed the medical ethics program. And I challenged their vaccine mandate in federal court back in August of 2021. And the university swiftly fired me after that. This is a lawsuit on behalf of people like me with natural immunity. And the latest on that is last month, the CDC finally caught up to the science and endorsed my central argument in the case, which is that we shouldn't discriminate between vaccinated and unvaccinated. First, because natural immunity is more robust than vaccination. And second, because these are not sterilizing vaccines. These vaccines don't prevent infection and transmission. So my case is actually still in the federal appellate court, and we're just waiting for a judge to be assigned and for the case to be heard. But given that the CDC is now fully endorsing my position, I anticipate that the outcome of this case will hopefully go in my favor and set a precedent that there are limits to what the state can do in terms of mandating, a novel therapy to be injected into people without informed consent.
So what do you mean by they don't have informed consent?
Well, so with a vaccine mandate, basically, if you're under a threat of losing your job, that constitutes a form of coercion. So, legally informed consent means you have to be given accurate information about the vaccine. Which was also not available in 2021 during the mass vaccination campaign. And second, you have to be able to make that decision freely to accept or decline that medical intervention. So even subtle forms of pressure or coercion would undermine informed consent when it comes to a research study or when it comes to consenting for a surgery or a medication. And these vaccine mandates obviously did an end run around that basic principle of medical ethics. The principle of informed consent is the central principle articulated in the Nuremberg Code, which was a response to Nazi atrocities, was a response to medicine in the Third Reich, where they experimented on people without their consent, often doing really horrifying experiments. And the world reacted very strongly to that. 50 years ago, after World War II. And somehow during the pandemic, we decided that it was okay to toss that principle, really the foundation of 20th century medical ethics. We decided it was okay to just toss that principle overboard and mandate not just a medical intervention, but a medical intervention that by our own federal government's definition was still experimental. That was authorized only for emergency use. And it was not a fully authorized product when these mandates were initiated.
So now I have to remind people that while the vaccine does not stop transmission or contraction, according to YouTube science, that it does slow the transmission and contraction. And if I don't say that, they'll take my channel down. So I just want to let people know I'm saying that. And I don't want to lose my channel. And so I have to say that, but now the two big things have come out. One thing was that natural immunity was in the data from Pfizer.
Oh yeah.
And we knew that in the fall of 2021, correct? That Pfizer had found out that natural immunity was at least as good as the vaccine was, right? Correct?
That's right. And this should not have surprised anyone, Jimmy, because we've never had a vaccine that is superior to infection-induced immunity. That's what a vaccine is trying to imitate. A vaccine, that's the gold standard. And a vaccine is trying to get as close to infection-induced or natural immunity as it can without causing severe symptoms. That's the whole concept behind a vaccine. So it should not have surprised anyone that natural immunity would be at least as good and possibly superior. And we now know that it's, in fact, superior. to the immunity that you get from a vaccination.
And so it seems that would be an unbelievably strong argument against mandatory vaccinations of someone who has already proved that they have the antibodies to the virus, because then they would have natural immunity. Now, natural immunity is a thing that has been going on since the beginning of time. Why do you think doctors during COVID forgot about it? Like, I saw Dr. Sanjay Gupta, he went on Joe Rogan's show, and he advised it because Joe Rogan already had COVID. He kicked it in 48 hours. He tested negative for it in 48 hours. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta told him, you should go get a vaccine now. And Joe Rogan had to explain to a doctor on television about natural immunity. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta acted like he'd never heard of it. Why did this happen during COVID?
No, it's very baffling, because this is really immunology 101. This is something that a first year medical student should understand very clearly. But what happened during COVID was that public health authorities and people in positions of power, people at the NIH, for example, who are responsible for funding science, basically made it clear that they wanted a needle in every arm.